Hello everyone and welcome to today's session on remote data access, formerly known as Sage Drive. Today we're going to learn about how remote data access works, how to set it up. So we're not going to be doing any troubleshooting today, we're just focusing on the introduction to the feature. My name is Abby and I'm going to be your host for this afternoon. Now it is also just going to be me, so I'm going to be your host and I'm going to be answering questions. So do please bear with me. If you do pop a question across, I'll try my best to answer it live on the session. If I don't get a chance to, what I will do is I'll reach out to you via email with an answer to your question. Before we start the session, just want to cover some housekeeping. So what you'll see when you join is that you'll be placed on mute automatically. If you do have any questions, you can use the questions panel down the right-hand side of your screen by clicking the option that looks like a little speech bubble with the question mark in the middle. We do also have a handout for today. You can download this by clicking on the button that looks like a little document with a folded corner. And I would recommend downloading this as it will have some helpful links to our help centre. Okay, so this is what we're going to be covering on today's session. So we're going to be covering what is remote data access. We'll also be covering what are RDA requirements, so RDA for short. We'll also look at things to consider before you, things to consider before you decide whether you're going to use remote data access and whether it works for your business. I'm then going to go through scenarios because we get a lot of questions as well. What if I'm doing this? What if I'm doing that? So we're going to go through some scenarios to help you understand better of how remote data access works. We'll then go through set up remote data access, and that's going to be some video demonstration as well. And these videos will be included in your in the recording, and that recording you will receive around an hour after the session has ended. Towards the end, we've got some FAQs, and then we'll summarise the session. Now, just before we move on to the content, I just want to launch a poll on your screen there. And I'm just wanting to know, do you currently use remote data access? So you can just pop an answer in there for me. Yes, no, I choose not to, or no, I don't know what it is. So like I say, there's no right or wrong answer. Just try to gain some insight as to where people are at currently with remote data access. Lovely, I can see some votes are starting to come in now. So what we usually wait until we get around 70%. And then what I'll do is I'll close the poll down and I'll share those results with you as well. Okay, so we've got around actually near enough full votes there. So I'm just going to close that down. Don't worry if you haven't voted. So as you can see, we've got 29% of you who are currently using remote data access. You might be using it, but you quite not understand how it works. 43% of you are choosing not to use it, and 29% of you don't actually know what remote data access is. So it's really good insight as to where people are at with that. Okay, so I'll hide that poll and we'll get started. So we're going to start with connected services and a Sage account. So to use any of these, apps and add-ons in the software, you must have a Sage account linked to your company. So that's going to get you to access to connected services such as Satago, Invoice Finance, Invoice Payments, bank feeds, remote data access, and also as well online. So it might be that someone from your company accesses the invoices on MySage for your Sage products. But today we're going to focus on remote data access. If you do wish to find out more about apps and add-ons in the software, on your navigation bar down the left-hand side, just before where it says home, so it's second from the top, you can find more information on apps and add-ons. Alternatively, you can also find more information on the Help Centre. Okay, so when you use a Sage account, there's often a lot of confusion between when you use a Sage account and when you use your logon name and username. So your Sage account window is going to look like this one on the left. So this is when it's going to ask for an email and password combination. When you see this window, this is when you'd either need to be authenticating. So when you see this in the software, you need to be authenticating your apps and add-ons in the software. So it might be that when you're setting it up, you'll authenticate using your Sage account. Or it might be, so the way that connected services work is each connected service goes off a digital token, and that digital token will expire every 6 months, up to any time up to 6 months. And you may need to re-authenticate just to re-authenticate that add-on. Whereas the logon window, which is the one on the right, is what you'll see when you're just generically accessing your company in Sage 50 accounts. So you might log on as manager, or you may have been assigned your own user logon name and password. So the one on the left is only when you need to re-authenticate. Now this might pop up at the point of logging in, but it's not necessarily always going to be the case. It could be that you've logged in, obviously you see the window on the right, and then halfway through the day you might just see this the Sage account window on the left pop up because that token has expired. But you're not going to see that one on the left every time you log in. Okay, so what is remote data access? So formerly, remote data access was formerly known as Sage Drive, and it was introduced in, I think it was version 21, but it's now known as remote data access. This feature enables you to share your data securely via the cloud, giving you and other users the freedom to work anywhere with an internet connection and Sage 50 cloud accounts, or Sage 50 accounts, is installed on their computer. Now you must be on version 27 or above. All variants do have access, so it doesn't matter whether you're on Essentials, Standard or Professional, you will have access to this option. Now, it's not an extra cost, it is included in your subscription. Now, please note, there's a very important information that I like to emphasize, that remote data access does not permanently store your data in the cloud, and you must take regular backups. Okay, so we don't store a copy of your data in the cloud. With Sage 50 accounts, it is a desktop product, so it is your responsibility to make sure that you are taking regular backups of your company data. Okay, so remote data access requirements. So as I've mentioned already, version 27 and above. Software needs to be installed locally on each machine. Now, all users need to be on the same version and build. So you can check this by going to help and in the about section of your software, and then in the top left hand corner you've got program details, and it will tell you what your version is. If you're doing new installs on new machines, then you will need the license information, so you can get that from other machines that already set up with Sage. And again, that's exactly the same place. It's just help and about, and then it's just under the license information in the middle, and you'll see your license, your activation, and your license information. All computers must meet system requirements, and because it uses internet connection, you must meet the minimum internet speeds of 4 Mbps download and 2 Mbps upload. Now, for the best results, we do recommend that you use wired internet connection where possible. And also as well, a key phrase that I always say, you are only as strong as your weakest connection. So if you have someone whose internet is quite spotty and internet connection isn't great, that may have an impact. So you might want to consider how they connect to the data? Is that going to be best for them? And also as well, you need a Sage account to be able to use remote data access, and that's per user. So each user needs to have their own username and their own email address. I have included guides in the top right for RGA requirements, which just reiterates kind of what I've went through here. But also as well, I've just included the speed test. So then you can send this to your colleagues if they're in different locations, so they can test their internet speeds as well. Okay, so things to consider before setting up remote data access. So you want to check the size of your data. So you can do this by going to Help, then into About, then under Data Information, which I think is in the middle of the screen, you want to check the number of splits that you have. So the number of splits are transactions that you have in the transactions module. So every transaction you have in the transactions module is one split. We recommend you have fewer than 250,000 splits. We also want to be checking the number of invoices, orders, and other records as well. There is a link to an article I've provided down the bottom right there on your handout. And this will tell you, obviously gives you the recommended amount for each area. Now, this is not just specific to remote data access, but just a general rule of thumb to keep your data running smoothly and efficiently. You do find that you're accessing these limits. Now, it doesn't mean that your software is going to stop working. You may see reduced performance, but we do have processes in place to tidy up your data. We've got the likes of Clear Audit Trail and how to delete invoices and orders, and that's sessions that we're covering in January if you want to get registered for those. You also want to be making sure that you're checking your internet speeds at each individual site. So you are only as strong as your weakest connection, as I've already said. I'm going to reiterate this probably quite a few times throughout the session, just to remind you, making sure that you're taking regular backups of your data. And lastly, majority of your data will sync, but there are a few things that don't, such as archives, memo attachments, and your standard layouts, as everyone will have a copy of those as standard. However, if you do rename a customized layout or report that reflects the same as a standard default report, such as the goods delivery note, if you want that customized, and you do need to change the name of that to the standard, then this is not going to sync, and you will have to share this manually if that is the case. But if you do require any more information on what we've just discussed on this section, I have included that also the link in terms of which files sync as well, just under the data limits. And they're just clickable buttons and they'll take you to the guides. Okay, so let's look at the first scenario. So this scenario is if you weren't using remote data access. So you might find that this is the position that you're in at the moment. So you might have to share your data with your accountant, and it may look a little something like this. So we've got Joe, who's in his office. Joe would process invoices. He would then take a backup of his data and then share this with his accountant. And that's Sarah in the right. Sarah would then restore that backup into her own copy of the software and process the relevant adjustments. Now, whilst all of this is going on, Joe would not be able to process, as when he gets the backup from Sarah, it's going to overwrite his current data. So when you're using remote data access, it allows you to work concurrently without that back and forth, one processing then the other. Let's take a look at some common scenarios that you may come across, and you might find that you fit into one of these categories as well. So here is the same scenario as the manual data sharing we've just seen. Joe is in the office and his accountant is external in her own office. And they're both using remote data access. So Joe can continue processing those invoices whilst as accountant is adding those adjustments. Now, when you have a one user license, as long as you set up your accountant with the right user type, which is the account bookkeeper type, this will not count towards your users logged in. Okay. Now, we've got a scenario, not necessarily where it's a one user license, but you might find a scenario where you work both from home. So you have a hybrid work and you work both from home and in the office. And you might have a laptop at home and a computer in the office. So instead of taking a backup in the office and then carrying that USB stick home and then restoring it onto the machine at home, you can have Sage installed on that second machine, so that machine at home, and using remote data access. All he has to do is log into his data, and everything he has processed in the office will then synchronize to his home computer. Now, you don't need to create multiple users for this. You just have the one user, which is Joe. You have your email address assigned to Joe's user, and then when he gets home, we're going to talk about obviously how to download as a remote site later on in the session, and you'll understand what I mean. You would just log in with your email on your Sage account, and then you would then choose that company to download, and you can just log in with the same username. Now, here's scenario 3. So you might have a scenario where you've got Joe in the office, you've got Stephen at home, and then again we've got Sarah, the accountant, in her own office. So each person in this scenario is classed as a remote site. Now, if you're on version 27, it's slightly different. It's still, you've got a main site and a remote site. Whereas if you upgrade to version 28 or above, all sites are equal. So that means that on version 28 and above, big processes can be done at any site. So Stephen could do the year end at home if he wanted to. Now, if you do only currently have a one user license, but you would like more people to work concurrently, then you can contact our support team as well to increase your user license. Now, the last scenario I want to go through before we move into video demonstration is where we've got a server involved. So now you have Joe and Marie in the office, but they are networked by a server. So although they are two separate users using their own machines in the office, because they are working from the same data location, which is the server, they class as one site. And then you would have Stephen at home and then Sarah, the accountant, as another site. If you do have a server set up, then we would recommend to set up remote data access from that location first, so you make sure everyone in the office is set up and able to access, and then you would only apply remote data access to Joe and Marie's user records if they had another machine at a different location and they needed to connect remotely. Okay, so I haven't had any questions come through as of yet, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the demonstration of how to set up remote data access, how to add additional users, and then how to connect remotely. Do get your questions across, and I'll pick those up towards the end if you do have any. Okay, so first we're going to set up remote data access from Joe's location. So let's take a look at the first video demonstration of what this looks like.
Once you've checked the system requirements and internet speeds of all required machines, you can set up remote data access. Log in as manager and check your software version by going to Help, then About. The version number is listed in the Program Details area, and all users must have the same version installed. Next, you should take a backup. To do this, open the File menu and click Backup. Select the files that you want to back up, amend the file name and choose the location by clicking Browse. To continue, click OK. A Check Data prompt will appear. We recommend that you do this every time. If any errors are reported, these must be fixed before you continue. To continue with the remote data access setup, you must link a Sage account to the company. To do this, navigate to Settings, User Management, and click Users. Manager will be highlighted by default, then click Edit. If remote data access has been set up in the past, Allow Remote Data Access checkbox will be available to select. If not, click Get Started Now with your Sage account. To find out more, click here. To continue with the setup, click Continue. Enter the name of the person who is going to be the data owner, preferably someone in a permanent position within the company. Additional information is available here. Once completed, click to confirm you are the right person. Next, check your company details. All mandatory information is marked with an asterisk. To continue, click here. Next, log into your Sage account. If you already have a Sage login, enter the details here and click Login. If you don't have one, create a new account using the link provided. Enter the email address you want to be assigned to the manager user, the name of the person you have assigned the data owner, and a password. Once you are happy with the information entered, click Sign Up. You'll receive a 6-digit code to your email. You can enter this here. Your Sage account is now connected. To close this message, click here. The Remote Data Access checkbox is now available to select. To complete the setup, select Allow the Remote Data Access checkbox and click Continue. You're then prompted to create an encryption passphrase. This is an extra layer of security, and all remote users will need this information when attempting to connect to your data. The passphrase must include a capital letter, a lowercase letter, and must be a minimum of 15 characters. To view the passcode at any time, follow the steps provided here. To complete the process and upload your data to the cloud, click Save. How long this will take will depend on the size of your data and internet speed. Once complete, Remote Data Access appears on your status bar.
Okay, so now we have linked the Sage account to the company and uploaded the data. Now, Remote Data Access is set up. Any changes that Joe makes from his Sage software will then sync to the cloud, and then any changes made by other users once they are set up will now reflect on Joe's machine. Next, we're going to demonstrate how to give access to remote, how to give remote data access to Louisa's user record. Again, if you do have any questions, do pop them across for me.
In this video, we're going to demonstrate how to add Remote Data Access users. To get started, log in as manager. From the Settings menu, choose User Management, then click Users. You can add Remote Data Access to an existing user, or if the user does not appear on your list, you can set up a new one. For the purpose of this demonstration, we'll edit an existing user. Highlight the relevant one on the list and click Edit. Navigate to Remote Data Access and select the checkbox to allow remote data access. Enter the required details for your user. Please note, a unique email address must be entered for each user. To move on to the next step, click Continue. When the summary page appears, check the information is correct, then click Save. An email is automatically sent to the email address entered. This contains a step-by-step guide on how to connect your Sage 50 accounts data remotely. You must provide all remote data access users with the passphrase that you created when you set up remote data access. For security purposes, you must send this separately.
Okay, so you can see how quick and easy it was to add that remote access to Louise's record. So now as Louise, we want to download that company to our machine. So let's take a look at the last demonstration of downloading the company.
We'll now demonstrate how to connect to Sage 50 accounts using remote data access. Before attempting to connect to your data remotely, ensure you have the relevant information to hand. You'll need your user logon name and password, the email address that has been applied to your user record, and the encryption passphrase. To connect remotely, open Sage 50 accounts and then click Add Company. Next, you'll see 4 setup options. Click Download. If you wish to change the location your data is saved to, click Change and follow the on-screen steps. To move on to the next step, click Continue. You are then presented with a set of instructions explaining the next steps. Click OK and log into your Sage account. If you don't have one, simply click to create an account and follow the prompts. Once logged in, you'll see the companies associated with your Sage account with more information about each one, such as the version of the data, who the data owner is, and if required, use the icon to view the company ID, which you can cross-reference with other users to check that it is the right version to download. Select the company you'd like to connect to, then click Next. Enter the encryption passphrase and click Continue. Finally, click Download. A progress bar appears while a copy of your Sage account's data downloads to your computer. Once complete, you'll be prompted to log in to Sage accounts using your logon name and password. Once you are logged in, your remote data access status is confirmed in the status bar along the bottom. Sage 50 accounts is now connected using remote data access, and you can now start the process as usual.
Okay, so once the company is downloaded, Louise can log in and start to process and make any changes straight away. And it will then sync those changes back to the cloud and reflect on Joe's machine in real time. So that is remote data access broken down into 3 easy steps: upload, add access, connect remotely. And again, if you wish to rewatch these videos we have shown you today, again, you will receive that link to the recording in your follow-up email. If you can't wait for the follow-up email, we do already have a recording available on our help centre, and you just go to sage.co.uk/webinars. Now, we have had 2 questions come through there, And I just want to cover these now. So, can the manager and user email address be the same, or do they have to be different? So, each user has to have their own username now and in email address. Now, the same email address can't be used more than once on different users, so they have to have their own username and their own unique email address. Come February, when two-factor authentication becomes mandatory and you're using remote data access, all users, even if they're not connecting remotely, will need to have an email address assigned to their user profile. If you want to find more out about the two-factor authentication, we will be doing another session. We've just had one this morning. There is a recording on our help centre, but there is a live session come January. The second question that's come through, is the company's data held permanently in the cloud, or is it only in the cloud when users are accessing the data via remote data access? So it's the latter, Sarah. So it's not permanently storing it in the cloud. It only it basically sends when changes are made, it then sends a copy up to the cloud to then sync to the other users. So you're not, if you find that for whatever reason your machine, or there's a fire and all your machines break, there's not going to be a copy stored in the cloud. You need to make sure that you've got those backup processes in place. So then because we don't store a copy of your data either, so you need to make sure that you've got a security in place, so that if in those sorts of emergencies something breaks, you've got a copy of your data, whether that be an external server, an external hard drive, and those are backed up somewhere as well. So there is always that misconception: is it stored permanently there? And it's not. Okay, so I have got some other frequently asked questions that I'll cover just while we wait for any further questions to come through. So that question there that we've just covered, so will the data be stored in the cloud? So no, only temporarily, so it can sync between different locations. Another question that we've had before, can I use this on a tablet? So no, you must have a copy of the Sage 50 account software installed on a compatible machine. And can I use RDA to replace my server? So we recommend to use a server connection where possible, as this will be quicker, but you can still use remote data access alongside the server for those who are in other locations. Okay, so to summarize today's session, it enables you to access your data from any location with an internet connection and software installed locally on each PC or laptop, whatever you're going to work on. All variants do have access. It's included in your subscription. Each user must have a unique email address assigned to their profile. And ensure that you are taking regular backups. If you do want any more support, you can visit sage.co.uk/help. I've also included a link to Remote Data Access Hub. And also as well, I've included a link for the recording of Backing Up Your Data webinar. That's a recording, but we are doing that session come January. If you do want to attend a live session, we'll talk all about how to back up your data, manage, look after your data, and also how to use the schedule backup option as well. Just before we move on, I just want to launch a poll on your screen there. And I'm just wanting to know, are you likely to use remote data access now you've attended today's session? So you can put your answers in there for me. So yes, no, or you're still unsure. So if you can pop your answers in for me, again, we'll wait until we get around 70–75%. We've got about 50% there, so I'll just give it a little bit longer for those to get your votes in. Again, then this is just more insight for us. There's no right or wrong answer in terms of answering this poll. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll close that poll down and I'll share the results with you as well. So we've got 60% of you are yes, more likely to use remote data access, and then 40% of you are still unsure. Just while we've got a little bit of time left, if you do have any concerns, let me just pop them in the chat. It might be something that I can put you in the right direction or reassure you of that process. Okay, so I'm just going to hide that poll down. So what I want to do now is I just want to show you the kind of webinars that we've got coming up. Obviously, we're coming to a close for December, so I'll just show you. So in the Help Centre, you've got the webinars along the top, and it brings you to this page here. If you want to view previous recordings, we've got the link here. So what we've got coming up, so we've got version 31. So we're currently going through all the new AI features that will be introduced in version 31. We've also got global changes, batch changes, corrections for bank transactions, VAT return, part 1, part 2, and part 3. We've got batch changes and running your year end. So running your year end, Thursday the 19th of December is the last webinar that we'll be doing for the year. So don't forget registered for those as well. We'll be returning on the 6th of January, so all of our January sessions are now available for you to register. And a lot of them we're doing all about clearing your data. So we talked a bit about data limits and things like that. These are the sessions where we talk about clear audit trail, clearing your records, getting rid of old customer records or invoices that are no longer needed, company archives, backing up your data, so on and so forth. Again, if you're wanting to get registered for the two-factor authentication session, we are doing two dates towards the end of January as well, as it does become mandatory on the 3rd of February. Okay, so that does bring us to the end of today's session. If you want to leave the session, let's try again. If you got what you need when you leave the session, you will receive an email in around an hour or so with links to both our webinar schedule and today's recorded session. Upon exiting the session, you will see a survey at the end. If you could please let us know any feedback regarding today's session. So any comments, feedback, what you did like, what you didn't like, or what you think could be improved. We always love to read those comments. Now we have got 2 questions outstanding here, so let me just have a quick look. So what type of situation causes a user to be working offline? So if the server crashed whilst working on Sage and a user did not log out, would he then be working offline? So that's slightly different to remote data access when it comes to just a server. If the server crashed, then they shouldn't be able to be logged in. They wouldn't be able to work offline. It may give them a message that the server the file might need refreshing, thinking that they're still logged in, but they wouldn't be able to work offline. When it comes to remote data access, if the internet connection is down or whatever, it does give you that option, but then you've got to think of, if you work offline, you make changes, it's then going to sync to everybody else, and that could overwrite some data. So you need to be cautious when doing that. Question there from Sarah. If I use remote data access and make some changes, but my colleague is not logged on, how does my colleague get the changes that I've made when they next log on? Exactly what you've just said there, Sarah. So as soon as they log on, it will sync to remote data access because those changes will be in the cloud waiting. And then when your colleague logs in, it'll sync those changes and it will reflect on their Sage. Okay, so there's no other questions that have come through. So what I'll do is I'll wrap this session up. I want to say thank you to you all for your participation today. And just a reminder, we've got plenty of sessions over the next couple of weeks, so don't be shy and get registered. So I want to say another thank you and take care.